Mea Culpa is the first Tyler Perry production I've ever seen, which actually came as a shock to me because I guess I assumed I'd seen something of his because I've seen his content being memed to death on social media all the time. So when I think of Tyler Perry, I think of a couple of things. Well, I guess I think of the Medea series. I think of bad wigs for his actors. I think of really bad writing and consequently over-the-top performances. I think of race and colorism being the center of virtually everything. And also I think of storylines where Black women are being treated terribly by like everybody in the show, right? So not great things. But I saw that Kelly Rowland was going to be in his movie, and I've never seen her act before, and of course I love Destiny's Child, so I decided to watch it. But I went in with not the highest of expectations. So I decided to watch this movie while on the treadmill so I can multitask. So I decided to put Mea Culpa on. I walked for 2 hours. I went at a speed at like 3.3 at the highest, and an incline of either 2.5 to 4 in case you're wondering. And I watched this movie on Sunday. So let's talk about it, okay? So Mea Culpa. So Kelly Rowland plays Mea, the main character in this show, this movie. And Mea is a high-end criminal defense lawyer based in Chicago. There are a few people that are in her orbit who are central to the story. So Mea has a husband, and the husband is very close with his family. So he's got a brother who's got a wife, so the sister-in-law we'll call her, and a mother who he's also very close to. So we open up the movie with Mea and her husband in couples counseling. So off the bat, we know things are awry with them. And it turns out that her husband, who's an anesthesiologist, I believe, he lost his job because he has some substance abuse issues and he showed up to work high. So Mea is taking care of the both of them. So we meet the family at a dinner party for the mother's 60th birthday. And the actress playing her is only 46 years old. So, you know, whatever. So we can see from Tyler Perry's very subtle writing that the mom does not like Mea. And she makes so many snarky comments. She even invited some other woman to the party. And she says that she wishes that this other woman was her daughter-in-law and not Mea. So we can see there's a lot of contention right there. And the son, the husband, he buys the mom some expensive watch for her birthday, and you can tell Mia's upset because we learned that she is, you know, paying all the bills and so on. One day, Mia is approached by a friend to represent an artist named Zaire. He is a painter based in Chicago as well, who is being accused of murdering his ex-girlfriend. And this artist apparently is so big that he is being paparazzied all over Chicago, which is like not believable at all, but whatever. And so he got himself into Mia's office directly because he's getting hounded too much in the lobby. So Mea meets up with him and they talk a bit about the case. And you can see there's a bit of flirtation going on there. And Mea sounds a bit hesitant. She's acting a bit hesitant, but he says, you know, give me your phone so I can put my phone number in your phone. And she's like, no, you can leave your phone number with the clerk outside and we can talk about it later. So you can see from the jump that there's going to be some sexual tension between these two. Mea goes home one day and she finds her brother-in-law and mother-in-law eating dinner at her table, which is very shocking to her because the mother-in-law especially doesn't like her. And so the brother-in-law says, oh, I heard that you might possibly be representing this artist, Zaire, and you really shouldn't do that. I should mention that the brother-in-law is a DA, so he would be representing the state. So if Mea was to represent Zaire, they'd be, you know, on opposite ends, and there's a potential conflict of interest because they're family. And he's very adamant, no, you can't represent this guy. And also Mea and her husband had discussion about it too, and the husband doesn't want her to take on the case. And he's being very condescending to her, telling her, no, you can't do it, I say so. And she says, you know what, look at all these bills we have. I'm the only one making money. We're paying for your mom's cancer treatments. I forgot to mention that the mom has cancer. And so they're really, you know, they have a lot of financial commitments. So she said, if I take this one case, like we can make so much money. And so after the conversation that she had with her brother-in-law and mother-in-law, she decides, you know what, I am going to take this case on. She enlists the help of a private detective friend who actually worked for her in the past because he's the one who figured out that the husband wasn't working anymore. And a sidebar, the husband has not told his family that he's been out of a job for 6 months. So the private detective does some work, and he does some digging into Zaire to get some more information about the case. So Mea and the private detective guy go to Zaire's house to talk about the discovery evidence and how bad it looks and so on. And the private detective guy was going on and on about the reporting he found or the evidence he found about Zaire's sexual proclivities, right? And they go into detail about some of the things that he likes to do. And it just came off really corny because it just, I don't know, it sounded like basic things. It didn't really sound like anything like too raunchy or whatever. And they're like, well, you do this. Well, I guess because you do this, you murdered your girlfriend. Like, I don't know. I didn't really see how the two correlated to each other. And Zaire, of course, is an artist, so he's all angsty, and he's like, oh, why are you asking me these questions? I like what I like, kind of a situation, right? And so anyway, so Kelly Mea and the private detective guy, they leave. They're like, you know what? I kind of think he did it. Based on what? I don't know, but they have a bad feeling about him. So Mea and her brother-in-law approach the judge to talk about the potential conflict of interest. And he says, yeah, since you are family, it is kind of weird to have you on opposite sides of this one case, but it'll be good for ratings, basically, he says. It'll make things spicy in the courtroom. So yeah, you're allowed to both be part of this case. And Mea goes to meet Zaire again, and I should say Zaire again because he is hounded by paparazzi. He only wants to meet at his loft at nighttime, which is so crazy. And I don't know why Mea hasn't put her foot down. She's a lawyer, but whatever. So she goes to his place, and they're talking about the case and so on and so forth. And then he mentions things like, oh, you seem pretty uptight, and you need to let loose a little bit. And so he makes her paint something and paint with her eyes closed and use this color to express this feeling. And it's really corny stuff, right? And you can tell that Mea is kind of attracted to him, but she, of course, she doesn't, want to cross the line because she's married and she's a professional. And so she kind of backs off a little bit. And it's time for her to go home, and she lives outside of Chicago, so she has to take a train home. And so Zaire says that he would either drive her to the train station or drive her home. I can't remember. So they go down to his parking lot, and of course, because he's an angsty artist, he doesn't have a sedan. He has a motorbike. And Mea says, no, I can't go on the motorbike. Not because she doesn't have a helmet or because she thinks it's unsafe. She says because she's wearing a skirt and it's inappropriate. I'm like, girl, that's the least of your concerns. Also, you're a high-end lawyer. You can get an Uber to go to the train station or an Uber to go home. So anyway, she gets something, and she takes a taxi, or she ends up at the train station. And while she's on the train, she's thinking about this run-in with the client. So the next day, Zaire actually gets himself to Mea's office, and in the lobby, he also meets Mea's husband, who's there giving her some roses to apologize and, kind of make things right with their marriage. But he sees Zaire approaches her and touches a small of her back, and he doesn't like it. And so when he's about to leave, he gives her like a big kiss on the forehead so that Zaire knows, like, oh, this is my woman kind of a situation. Again, it's really corny. And once again later, Mea finds herself at Zaire's loft at nighttime. And he basically full on tells her, I like you, I hug you because I like to hug you, I like to feel you, like all these like different things. And Mea says, like, no, this isn't appropriate. And he says, tell me the truth. I know you're attracted to me. And she says, no, that's a lie. And then he says, oh, you can't be honest with me about your feelings. How can he be my lawyer if he can't be true about that? You know what? I need a new lawyer. Okay, bye. And so Mea leaves. They both decide to leave because Zaire says he needs to blow off some steam and go to a club, but a club that no one will see him at. So like not a dance club. And they go downstairs through the loft complex parking lot, and he turns a corner and he goes into a room, and Mea's following him, and presumably he can't see her following him, but he goes into a room that is all lit up in like devil red, right? And Mea decides to follow him. So she's walking into this room, And then there's a staircase going down, and it's basically like a sex dungeon, right? So it's bright red. You can hear like moaning and stuff like that. The place is draped around with a bunch of sheets, and you can see silhouettes of unclad people doing different things, right? And so she goes in there and she's looking around like, oh my goodness. And then she keeps on walking. I don't know what she was expecting to see, but of course she sees more of the same. And then somebody propositions her, and then she like scampers right off because she can't handle it. It's like, I don't even know why you even went there and what you expected to see after spending, a good amount of time in there, but whatever. She goes home and she sees that her husband is gaming online, and he happens to be playing a game with the same woman who was at his mom's birthday party, so she's none too happy about that. And then afterwards, Mea gets a text message from her friend, the private detective guy, who has a picture of Mea's husband with a woman in a hotel hallway going into her room. So now Mea thinks that her husband is cheating on her. So she's not happy about that either. So she decides to go back to Zair's loft. So he's back at his place right now, and he's brought a woman that he found in the sex dungeon. So they're there doing their thing, and Mea is just kind of watching. And then he dismisses that woman, and he and Mea start to like kissing and things like that. Then she pulls away, and he says, you know what? Let's go on a ride. So they do end up going on the motorbike. So now she's wearing her jeans as he requested her to wear. And they're on the motorbike. They don't really go anywhere, just for a spin, because they end up right back at his place. And then they start to like kiss, and then they have sex too. And of course, because he is an artist, there's paint involved. So they're like painting their bodies and stuff. And it was just so over the top. Like, it was just, I don't know, it was really silly. Anyway, so after they're done with that, and after they wake up, Mea looks up at the ceiling and she sees there's a portrait of her there. And she's like, oh my gosh, he painted me? Which I personally thought that was kind of weird that he painted her and put her on top of the ceiling, or her portrait on top of the ceiling, but that's what he did. So the next day, Mea goes to the office, goes to work, and her husband and the sister-in-law are like, where were you last night? We were calling you. You didn't answer. What was going on? And so she's just said that she had a lot of work to do on a case or something. And they said the mom had to be moved to a hotel closer to the cancer treatment center, and they were just wanted to know they were doing that last night, and they wanted to know where Mea was. So that it turns out that Mea's husband was not cheating on her with a woman in a hotel room. He was just helping his mom move in to this place. So she feels terrible. And then she goes back to Zair's place and says, you know what? I can't represent you anymore. I made a mistake. Here's your case files. I gave your information to another lawyer. You'll be okay, but I can't represent you anymore. And so she has to go to the judge and say, recuse herself from the trial. But then she gets a phone call from a woman who runs an art gallery that has a lot of Zair's paintings. So she goes over to this gallery, and of course there's paparazzi there with like protest signs. And the art gallery owner, she's a slightly older woman. She's like maybe in her mid to late 50s. She was actually really over the top, but pretty fat, because I kind of did like her character. And she was just talking about Zair because she wanted to talk about him. And she says, no, he was never violent. I don't think he's violent. But she basically just said, well, he's a player, which I think we could have all guessed just based on his personality and his job and everything. And she was saying how basically he made her paint her feelings. He slept with her as well. He also drew a picture of her and put it on the ceiling. So Mea hears all this, and now she feels so she's been really played by this guy. So she feels terrible about herself. So there was, I don't know, I didn't really see the point in that part of the storyline, but whatever. Tyler Perry put it in. Anyway, so Mea goes to her brother-in-law's house, and the entire family is there. And Mea goes along with her husband. And the husband says, I heard that you had to recuse yourself from the case because of an inappropriate relationship. What's going on there? And the mom's piping in too. It's like, yeah, an inappropriate relationship. What are you doing? How could you do this to my son? My son's such an honest guy, and he supports you and buys all your fancy clothes. And Mia's like, hey, do you want to tell them? And then he tells them, you know what, actually, I'm in rehab. I haven't been working for 6 months. Mea is supporting us, right? And so he's all crying and emotional. They didn't know that, right? But they said, okay, we'll deal with that later. But Mea, her husband says, did you sleep with this guy? And then Mea admits that, yes, she did. And the husband was upset, which, I can understand. But he does Teresa Giudice from Housewives of New Jersey. It picks up a table and flings it over in the most over-dramatic fashion ever. It was kind of funny. It was silly. So it's all been a lot for Mea, so she decides that she needs to take a little break, and so she goes to the Dominican Republic for, some R&R, right? And so while she's there, she happens to see a woman who looks a lot like the picture she's seen of the supposedly murdered ex-girlfriend of Zaire. Her name is Heidi. And she sees her and she says, Heidi? And the woman reacts, so obviously she is Heidi, and she runs away. Then Mea follows her. And she's like a cleaning lady at this resort, and so she sprays some Windex in Kelly Rowland's eyes, or Mea's eyes. So Mea calls her brother-in-law and says, hey, you know what? You have no case because this Heidi woman, she's actually alive. I'm seeing her right here in the Dominican Republic, and so you need to deal with this. And I thought, she knows that her brother-in-law is a DA. He wants to win the case, and you can't win a murder case if there's been no murder, right? So she should have called the police instead of calling the brother-in-law, who she doesn't like. He doesn't like her. So it made no sense that a smart lawyer would make that decision, but she did. So Mea wraps up her trip, and she goes to her brother-in-law's house. Again, the entire family is there except for her husband. And you can see the brother-in-law and the mother-in-law that they were up to no good. And they're being very, overly polite, just very suspicious, right? And so the brother-in-law says, here, Mea, I made you a drink. And he passes her a glass of red wine. So nobody says, I made you a glass of red wine. You say, I made you a cocktail. You don't say, I made you a glass of red wine. And you can see, they do a close-up on the glass, and you can see that there are bubbles emanating up. So clearly he put some kind of a drug in there, which was so obvious. It was so dumb. And so anyway, Mea and the sister-in-law say they're about to start dinner, and Mia's about to cut up some vegetables. And the mother-in-law say, oh no, don't worry about it. I'll deal with it. And she grabs the knife. So now she's armed with a knife, right? And so anyway, Mea gets a phone call from her private detective friend, and she goes off in a corner to take it. And he says, sorry about the bad intel about your mother-in-law, but where are you? She says, I'm at the house with the families here. And he sends her an email, and she reacts like, what? Oh my goodness, you don't really see what's going on. But anyway, after she gets off the phone with that guy, she looks up over in the corner, and there is a room that is lit up in red, very similar to the dungeon that she went to the other day. And she walks over there slowly, and there are some pictures. So at first I thought it was a dark room, but it wasn't a dark room. It was just a room with red light. But there were pictures in there, and there was a portrait of the sister-in-law, who Mea always got along with the sister-in-law. Anyways, it's a portrait of her that was painted in the same style that Zaire paints his pictures. So the illusion is that Zaire also slept with the sister-in-law. So this explains why the brother-in-law really wants to, get this guy on the stand and get him incarcerated, right? So anyway, the mother-in-law sees that she's seen this, and she's acting all suspect, and she knees on Mia's phone and breaks her phone, which the physics of it just don't really make any sense, but whatever. So the email that Mea received has to deal with the mother, and she finds out the mother actually does not have any cancer treatments, any cancer. She's not going for treatment. And it turns out the mother and her son, the brother-in-law, made this story up to, mess up Mea for one, but also him as a DA. It creates a nice sympathy story, so we can get sympathy votes for his next election. So that was all made up. Again, lots of machinations with this family. The mom goes on again talking about how she's so upset. She's got these terrible daughters-in-law who slept with the same guy. They're so worthless, this. With the sister-in-law, it appears as though she had no idea that her husband ever found out about this affair that she had. So this is all new news. And he tells his wife, I want you to stab Mea. So he gives the wife the knife, the same knife they were cutting up the vegetables in, and says, stab Mea. And she's hesitating again because they're actually friends. And then she goes to stab the husband, but he overtakes her and punches her out or something, and she ends up on the floor. And then Mea and the mother-in-law end up in a squabble as well. And so Mea jets out of the house. She runs out of the house, and the mother-in-law and the brother-in-law are following her. Mea and the brother-in-law end up outside the house fighting against a car, and Mea ends up stabbing him in the neck or on the side somewhere with a key. So then she goes to a truck, gets in to drive off, but the mother-in-law jumps on the hood of the truck. And then Mea drives off. She drives into a tree, and the mom goes flying, so presumably the mom's dead or she's really incapacitated. And so the truck is dead now, and so Mea just runs out into the street, and look who happens to show up, her husband. And so she stops him. She's all frantic. She's like, oh my gosh, they tried to kill me. Call 911, call 911. So he puts her in the car, or he calls on 911 and says, hey, 911? Yeah, could you come to address blah, 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 whatever. And he seems really calm, cool, and collected. And so they're in the car now. He is frantic, and he's all cool as a cucumber. And then he gets a phone call, and it's, hey, 911. So 911's calling him back. And he's answering, yeah, yeah. Mea puts the phone call through the Bluetooth speakers of the car so she can hear the conversation. And the conversation is actually with the brother-in-law. And he's saying, oh, Mea found out what happened. We have to act fast. And basically, we got to deal with this Mea character here. Mea sees that there's an 18-wheeler approaching them on the other side of the road. And so she lets loose her husband's seatbelt. And he says, what's going on here? She gets the wheel of the car, the steering wheel, steers it into the path of this 18-wheeler to cause a crash. And because the husband's seatbelt's off, he will go flying, and he did, and he died, which was a very, very risky thing to do because she could have also ended up crashed and dead in this accident she orchestrated, which I'm not entirely sure how she ended up unscathed, but she did. All right, so time passes by, and the trial of Zaire has happened, and he is exonerated. We don't see any of this. We just see him on the steps of the court, and he is doing an interview with the press. Again, there's tons of paparazzi for this painter in Chicago. And he's just basically saying, yeah, thanks to my team, and especially to Mea for helping me win this case. And she's watching either on a TV or far away. She's not up in the area. She's watching it from afar. And then she gets a text from Zaire saying, thank you. And then she gets another text saying, let's meet later. And she sees the text message, and she gets her phone, and she tosses it out in a downtown Chicago garbage bin. She doesn't take out her SIM card. She doesn't reset it to factory settings. No, she just throws out her iPhone or Android or whatever it was and tosses it in the garbage and walks away. And that's the end of the story. So that's Mea Culpa. Okay, what did I take away from this whole experience? Well, I had a great walk on the treadmill. I was on there for 2 hours, 4 minutes. I burned almost 700 calories. I was in fat burning zone for 85 minutes, so that was really great. I also learned that these new treadmills in my gym location shut down after 35 minutes, so that was a bit annoying, but it's good to know. In terms of the actual movie, it was bad, as I suspected. It wasn't the absolute worst movie I've ever seen in my entire life, but it wasn't very good. Again, Tyler Perry, I know he writes, produces, and directs all of his productions, and it shows. It shows that there's nobody else there to give critical input and to say, this isn't a good idea, or we should tweak this, so on and so forth. So it was just, I feel bad for these actors because I know Trevante Rhodes. I actually just watched Moonlight about a month ago, and he was excellent in that. I know he's a good actor. I've never seen Kelly Rowland act before. Her character was a bit wooden. Her acting was a bit wooden, but I think her character was too, so it kind of worked out. And everyone was, they did well with the material that they got, but they could have gotten much better material. And I do have there are some things in there that just didn't sit right in terms of like the screenplay. Like, why was the script written this way? For example, there's a point where Mia is talking to Zaire, basically telling him that he needs to take his case seriously, it's a big deal and stuff like that, right? And she says something like, do you want to get the death penalty? And that struck me because I didn't think there was a death penalty in Illinois, and there hasn't been one since 2011, so he's not getting the death penalty in Illinois for this. Mia's character in general just didn't really make much sense to me. Again, as somebody who's a criminal defense attorney in Chicago, who's the best in the city apparently, she just seemed really weak at some points. Again, Zaire would talk to her, like demand that she would do things, like all those visits in his place and the way he talked to her and talked to her about how she's not authentic and how she's not satisfied in her marriage, and like just going on, just talking to her, just talking down to her like she's not his lawyer who he needs the help from, right? And she just seemed a lot weaker than you would expect her to be, even from her husband. Her husband, who has no job, has addiction issues, he would talk down to her like she was his 16-year-old daughter. Like, it didn't make any sense, the characterization. But again, Tyler Perry loves to have his black women actresses and characters treated all sorts of ways. So I guess I shouldn't be surprised by that. Also, with Zaire's character, I never got the sense that he was taking the case seriously. He just wanted to meet up with Mia, to flirt with her, to toy with her, and so on and so forth. There was one point where the guy who presented the case originally said, he's fighting for his life, he's really worried. He never seemed worried. It never seemed like a big deal that, yeah, he's facing murder charges. So I think Mr. Perry could have done a better job by spending more time talking about that and integrating that into the storyline, as opposed to just showing Zaire as some angsty, brooding artist. There's a nitpick that it's not the biggest deal in the world, but it really struck out to me because it just didn't need to be there. Kelly Rowland was talking to Zaire about the case, and she said, she was talking about the discovery evidence, and she said that the evidence was very damning. Damning. She pronounced the N in damning, which for a second had me questioning, have I been pronouncing it wrong the whole time? My entire life? No, I haven't. She said damning. It didn't make any sense. Also, she was talking to him about attention to detail. And instead of saying attention to detail, she says, I know you're an artist, you have attention or an eye for details with an S at the end. And like, that's just not the way you say it. And again, if there was somebody else reviewing the script, that little thing would have been caught. Again, not the biggest deal in the world, but it really shouldn't be in there. I would say the best thing going for this movie is the cast, because they're all good-looking people, so they were nice to look at, but that's not good enough for a movie. Like, that was like the only good thing they had going. And also their music selection was good. And I was actually surprised that Tyler Perry didn't rely too much on known music to make the story that much more engaging. But he did have some good songs, some Isley Brothers. He played a song by Banks. I haven't listened to Banks in like 10 years, so that was kind of nice. But otherwise, yeah, there wasn't really much going for this movie. Again, it's not the worst thing in the world. I would recommend watching this if you're a Kelly Rowland fan, or if you're with a group of friends and you just want to have a laugh at a really corny movie. So yeah, if you watch it while you're on a plane or something. I did have to bring down the brightness of my iPhone screen when the nudity came up because I was at the gym, so there's nudity in there if that's what you like. Yeah, but it wasn't good. I would give it a 4 out of 10 if I were to give it a number grade. So yes, let me know what you think about this review. Do you agree with what I'm saying? Did you see the movie? Did you like it? Do you like Tyler Perry stuff? What do you think? I'd love to hear your opinion, so make sure you leave your comments down in the comments area, and I'll see you next time with another video here on I See Melanie. Okay, bye guys!